TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel has entered into the 11th day of war since the abhorrent massacre which Gazan Islamist terror groups inflicted upon southern Israel. U.S. President Joe Biden is set to arrive in Israel as Jerusalem prepares for a full-scale ground invasion of the terror-infested Gaza Strip. A Russian resolution to force an Israel-Gaza ceasefire fails to pass at a UN Security Council vote. Israel has entered into the 11th day of war since the Islamist terror groups from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip launched a massacre on Israel's southern civilian communities. IDF aircraft and artillery, in close cooperation with the ISA, continue to conduct extensive strikes on terror infrastructure throughout the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. Moreover, over the past 24 hours alone, the IDF successfully eliminated 6 Hamas leaders. And while the abhorrent terror group released footage of one Israeli hostage as part of its evil psychological warfare, the IDF is unceasingly preparing for Jerusalem's green light to cleanse the Gaza Strip from its terror infestation.
Our responsibility now is to enter Gaza, to reach the places where Hamas prepares, operates, plans, and launches rockets, to harm Hamas very severely in every place, every Hamas commander and operative, to destroy its infrastructure, in one word, to win.
It is important to know that the Lebanese-Iranian proxy Hezbollah continues to provoke Israel with sporadic attacks, including anti-tank missiles, mortar, and rocket fire toward IDF bases along the border and civilian communities in the Lebanese border sector. And while the IDF has retaliated with artillery and aerial strikes against Hezbollah infrastructure, Jerusalem officials assert that Israel is not interested in widening the conflict. Moreover, in the opening plenum of the Israeli parliament's winter session, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu voiced an unequivocal warning to both Hezbollah and its patrons in Tehran.
I have message to Iran and Hezbollah, don't test us up north. Don't make the same mistake that you did once. Because today the price that you will pay will be more extensively heavier.
While prepared for any scenario that may evolve in the north, the Israeli premier underscored further that Israel's chief objective remains the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip.
Now we are focused on one goal: to get forces and go forward to victory. For this purpose, we need determination. Victory will take time.
After holding a regional tour as diplomatic efforts to avoid a regional conflagration persist, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Jerusalem's top leadership, and in an unprecedented sign of the U.S.-Israel alliance, Washington's top diplomat participated in the Israeli cabinet's security meeting ahead of the looming invasion of Gaza. Subsequently, Blinken also met with Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who voiced his deep appreciation for the unequivocal support of the United States.
We always knew that the United States is a great ally, but today the people in Israel and in the world see it in their own eyes. You are here, second time in this week. Senior officials of America are here every day, and the American flag is sailing on board in the Mediterranean, and we know what is the meaning. So let me tell you, Mr. Secretary, this will be a long war. The price will be high, but we are going to win for Israel, for the Jewish people, and for the values that both countries believe in.
Jerusalem's top defense official went on to address Israel's public, reiterating the security establishment's resolve to stop at nothing until all of Israel's national security interests are achieved.
We will win because the nation and Israel must win. We will not cease this war until all of our objectives are met and until the moment in which Israel attains the achievements which it must fulfill for those Israeli civilians and troops from both sides of the border, also on our side, and also those who to our regret were kidnapped. We will reach all of the locations and we will win this war.
It is important to know that U.S. President Joe Biden is scheduled to travel to Israel tomorrow in what IDF spokesman Brigadier General Daniel Hagari referred to as having strategic importance for the Middle East at large and Israel in particular.
The visit of the President of the United States has strategic importance. Strategic importance for the entire Middle East and influence in that the most senior figure in the United States is coming to Israel at time of war, getting review of the war situation that talks of the different scenarios in the Middle East and the steps that will need to be taken in the event that Israel challenge. In the coming weeks, all of us together will have to manage our daily routines alongside managing the fighting. Our ability to manage daily routines alongside the war lies with only one thing: our resilience as a society.
Meanwhile, Secretary Blinken, in a separate press briefing from Israel, highlighted the goals which the U.S. President has set for his looming visit.
On Wednesday, President Biden will visit Israel. He's coming here at a critical moment for Israel, for the region, and for the world. And he's coming here to do the following. First, the President will reaffirm the United States' solidarity with Israel and our ironclad commitment to its security. President Biden will again make clear, as he's done unequivocally since Hamas's slaughter of more than 1,400 people, including at least 30 Americans, that Israel has the right and indeed the duty to defend its people from Hamas and other terrorists and to prevent future attacks. The President will hear from Israel what it needs to defend its people as we continue to work with Congress to meet those needs. Second, President Biden will underscore our crystal clear message to any actor, state or non-state, trying to take advantage of this crisis to attack Israel. Don't. To that end, he's deployed 2 aircraft carrier groups and other military assets to the region. Third, the President will continue to coordinate closely with our Israeli partners to secure the release of hostages taken by Hamas, including men, women, small children, Holocaust survivors, and American citizens, as an indispensable humanitarian effort. Fourth, President Biden will receive a comprehensive brief on Israel's war aims and strategy. Fifth, the President will hear from Israel how it will conduct its operations in a way that minimizes civilian casualties and enables humanitarian assistance to flow to civilians in Gaza in a way that does not benefit Hamas. To that end, today, and at our request, the United States and Israel have agreed to develop a plan that will enable humanitarian aid from donor nations and multilateral organizations to reach civilians in Gaza, and them alone, including the possibility of creating areas to help keep civilians out of harm's way.
While President Biden is set to arrive in Israel tomorrow, Russian President Vladimir Putin called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night, during which the two leaders discussed the heinous massacre which the Islamist Hamas perpetrated in southern Israel, as well as the war which ensued as a result. According to a statement by the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem, Netanyahu made it clear that Israel was attacked by vile and brutal murderers, and that Jerusalem is both determined and united, and it will not stop until it destroys the military and governing capabilities of Hamas. Prior to his conversation, President Putin addressed the war, voicing concern over regional implications. And while the terror onslaught triggered the latest events, the Russian leader voiced his conviction, as per Moscow's usual rhetoric, that the United States and the West are behind all that is wrong in this world.
I cannot help but say a few words about the unprecedented escalation of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. My colleagues also spoke about this just now, during which thousands of civilians on both sides have been killed and wounded. What happened, the large-scale tragedy that the Israelis and Palestinians are now experiencing, was a direct result of the failed U.S. policy in the Middle East. The Americans, with the support of their European satellites, tried to monopolize the settlement process in the Middle East, but did not concern themselves with finding compromises acceptable to both sides. And they certainly never took into account the fundamental interests of the Palestinian people. We are hearing about plans for a ground operation in Gaza. But you and I understand, speaking quasi-professionally, that the use of heavy equipment in residential areas is a complex matter fraught with serious consequences for all parties. And without heavy equipment in those residential areas, it is even more difficult to carry out these operations. And most importantly, casualties among civilians will be absolutely unacceptable. Almost 2 million people live there.
Per President Putin's instructions, Russia attempted to pass a draft resolution at the UN Security Council calling for a humanitarian ceasefire that would have essentially saved Hamas from obliteration.
The draft resolution has not been adopted, having failed to obtain the required number of votes.
While Russia's resolution gained support from China, among others, France, Britain, Japan, and the United States voted against Moscow's resolution.
Unfortunately, Russia's resolution presented today does not meet all of these responsibilities. Russia's resolution, put forward without any consultations, make no mention of Hamas, none. By failing to condemn Hamas, Russia is giving cover to a terrorist group that brutalizes innocent civilians.
We regret that the Council once again has found itself a hostage to the ego, the selfish intentions of the Western Bloc of countries. This is the only reason why it was not able to send a clear, strong, and collective message aimed at de-escalation. We're talking about the most serious explosion of violence over the past decades. Today, the entire world waited with bated breath for the Security Council to take steps in order to put an end to the bloodletting. But the delegations of the Western countries have basically stomped on those expectations. We believe that today's vote in the Security Council is very, very demonstrative. It clearly shows who are in favor of a truce, a stop of indiscriminate bombing and the provision of humanitarian assistance, and who is still in favor of blocking a single common message from the Security Council for purely selfish interests and political interests.
Israel, for its part, deplored the attempt to force Israel to cease fire.
The first step this Council must take before any calls for aid, calm or restraint, is to designate Hamas as the murderous terror organization that it is, just as the Council did with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Secondly, and no less important, this Council must support Israel's right to defend itself. But supporting this right doesn't mean echoing empty words. It means standing in solidarity with Israel in our rescue mission to obliterate Hamas's terror capabilities. If Hamas is not obliterated, such atrocities will be repeated, and not only in Israel.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to encourage you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. Moreover, if you're blessed by our daily updates and would like to help us bear the costs of these productions, Since TV7 Israel is 100% donation-based, please consider making a donation. You can do so by visiting our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our upcoming TV7 Israel updates. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.